In the quiet suburb of Oakwood, New Jersey, two women were about to face a defining moment in their lives. Charlotte and Madison had been friends for over a decade. They'd gone through everything together: college, heartbreaks, celebrations, and challenges. At 32 and 33 years old respectively, their bond was unshakable, or so Charlotte had believed. Charlotte, with her long, dark hair and sharp green eyes, had always been the one who others turned to for strength. She worked as an event planner, a career that reflected her organized, determined personality. Madison, on the other hand, was the more spontaneous one. With her curly blonde hair and warm brown eyes, she exuded a carefree energy that could light up any room. She had always been the more creative of the two, a fashion designer with an independent spirit. It was over a cup of coffee at their favorite local cafe, Maple Grove Cafe, that everything started to unravel. Charlotte had noticed something off about Madison lately, a distance that wasn't typical of their close friendship. Madison, who usually had an infectious smile and a witty remark for every situation, seemed reserved, her thoughts lost in another world. "Madison," Charlotte asked softly, her voice almost a whisper against the hum of the cafe, "what's going on? You've been different lately." Madison's face flushed, and she shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "It's nothing, Charlotte. Really. Just work stuff." But Charlotte could see through her lie. She knew Madison too well to believe her. The tension between them was palpable, and Charlotte's intuition kicked in. Something was wrong. She had no idea how deep the problem ran, but she knew this was the beginning of a storm that would shake their friendship to its core. As they sipped their coffee in silence, Charlotte's mind raced. She wasn't sure what was happening, but she felt that her world was about to change. The next few days were a blur for Charlotte. Madison's behavior had only become more erratic. She missed their weekly phone calls, and when they did speak, her voice lacked its usual warmth. Charlotte couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One evening, after work, Charlotte decided to drop by Madison's apartment unannounced. She had to know the truth. When Madison opened the door, her face was pale, and her eyes were red, as though she hadn't slept in days. "Charlotte, I wasn't expecting you," Madison stammered, stepping back to let her in. Charlotte didn't wait for an invitation. She walked into the small apartment, glancing around at the disarray. Clothes were scattered across the floor, and half-empty cups sat on the coffee table. It was a far cry from the neatness that Madison usually kept. "What's going on, Madison? You can't keep avoiding me like this. You're my best friend, and I'm starting to worry," Charlotte said, her voice firm but filled with concern. Madison's eyes filled with tears, and she wiped them away quickly. It's about you, Charlotte," she whispered. Charlotte froze, not understanding. "What do you mean? What about me?" Madison let out a shaky breath. "I've been seeing someone behind your back. Someone you know, someone I shouldn't be involved with. I never meant for it to happen, but it did." The words hit Charlotte like a slap to the face. She felt her knees weaken as Madison's confession sank in. "Who?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Madison hesitated, then lowered her gaze. "It's Aaron," she said. "Aaron?" Charlotte's mind raced. Aaron was Charlotte's fiancé. The man she'd planned to marry in 6 months. The man who had been a constant in both her life and Madison's. How long? Charlotte's voice shook with anger and disbelief. 3 months, Madison confessed, her voice broken. "I'm so sorry, Charlotte. I don't even know how it happened. It's a mistake. It was a huge mistake. I never wanted to hurt you." Charlotte stood still, staring at her best friend. The room seemed to close in on her. Madison was like a sister to her. How could she have done this? How could she betray Charlotte in the worst way possible? The silence between them stretched on, suffocating. Charlotte's mind raced, her emotions a jumbled mess of betrayal, hurt, and disbelief. She had always trusted Madison with her deepest secrets, her fears, her hopes. And now, this was how she repaid her. Finally, Charlotte spoke, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. "I need some time to process this. I don't know what to say, Madison." Madison nodded, her face crumpling in sorrow. "I understand. I'll leave. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Charlotte turned to leave, her heart heavy with the weight of the betrayal. She could hardly wrap her mind around it. She had never imagined that the two people she trusted most in the world would ever hurt her like this. The following week felt like a blur for Charlotte. She spent her days moving through work in a daze, her thoughts constantly returning to Madison's confession. The idea of confronting Aaron filled her with dread, but she knew she couldn't avoid it any longer. He needed to know that his secret had been exposed, and the life they'd been building together had been shattered. Charlotte had always believed in honesty. She had never imagined that the man she was about to marry would betray her in such a cruel, twisted way. Aaron had been her anchor through the toughest moments of her life. Their relationship had been built on trust, or so she had thought. Now, she was questioning everything about it. She decided to meet him at a small cafe near their apartment, a place where they used to go for quiet breakfasts and coffee dates. But this time, the atmosphere felt different. The soft hum of the cafe, the smell of freshly baked pastries, even the warm golden light from the windows, it all felt suffocating to Charlotte. When Aaron arrived, he immediately went for his usual affectionate greeting. But Charlotte couldn't bear it. She stood up, cutting him off mid-sentence. Aaron, stop. I know everything, she said, her voice steady but breaking under the weight of the words. He froze, confusion crossing his face. What do you mean? Everything about what? Charlotte didn't need to say anything more. She pulled out her phone and showed him the message exchange between Madison and Aaron. His face drained of color as he scanned the messages. There it was, proof of their affair. For 3 months, while Charlotte had been planning their future, he had been sneaking around with her best friend. I can explain, Aaron stammered, his face red with embarrassment and guilt. Explain? What could you possibly say? Charlotte's voice grew sharp, her anger boiling over. How long were you planning to keep this from me, Aaron? Were you ever going to tell me the truth, or was I supposed to just stay in the dark while you and Madison played with my life? He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His silence was the worst answer he could have given. I trusted you, Charlotte continued, her voice quiet now, the fight drained from her. I trusted you with everything, and this is what you do. You go behind my back with her. She gestured toward the phone in her hand. You betray me with the one person I thought I could count on the most. My best friend, my sister. Aaron's expression faltered as he reached out toward her. Charlotte, please. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. Charlotte took a step back, shaking her head. No, Aaron. This wasn't a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up groceries or missing a flight. This was a choice. You chose to betray me. And you did it with someone who knew how much you meant to me. You both knew. Tears welled in Charlotte's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had always prided herself on being strong, on handling life's challenges with grace. But this was different. The betrayal cut too deep. I can't do this anymore, she whispered, her voice cracking. I can't marry you. I can't be with someone who has no respect for me, for us, for what we've built. Aaron's face twisted with frustration. Charlotte, please. Don't do this. I love you. I'll fix this. I swear I'll fix it. Just give me a chance. But Charlotte knew it was over. She stood up, grabbing her purse from the table. I don't want you to fix anything. I want you to leave. I want you out of my life. She turned and walked away from him, her heart heavy with sorrow, but also with a sense of liberation. She had taken back control. It wasn't going to be easy, but she was done. She had been deceived, humiliated, and betrayed by the two people she had trusted the most. As she walked out of the cafe, she pulled her coat tighter around her and took a deep breath. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. She would rebuild. She would find herself again, without Aaron, without Madison. It was the hardest thing Charlotte had ever done, letting go of both Aaron and Madison. In the days that followed, she didn't want to face anyone. She spent most of her time alone in her apartment, processing the pain. She didn't speak to Madison after the confrontation. Part of her wanted to lash out, but she knew it wouldn't change anything. The damage was done. But then came the phone call that Charlotte had been dreading. It was Madison. "I don't know what to say." Madison's voice was hoarse, her tone full of regret. I'm so sorry, Charlotte. I ruined everything. I ruined you." Charlotte took a long breath, trying to find the right words. "You did, Madison. You ruined everything. But it wasn't just about the affair. It's about the betrayal. I trusted you both." Madison cried on the other end of the line. "Please, Charlotte. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I wanted you to know that I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing for me, but I see now that I was selfish." Charlotte closed her eyes, feeling her anger slowly turn into resignation. She couldn't keep fighting this. She had to move on. "I know, Madison. And I need to move on. I can't keep holding on to what was. I have to let you both go," Charlotte said quietly, her voice soft but firm. There was a long silence, and then Madison whispered, "I understand. I hope someday you can find it in yourself to forgive me." Charlotte didn't respond. She didn't know if she could forgive her. But for now, she was letting go. She had her own healing to do. The months that followed Charlotte's decision to end things with both Aaron and Madison were nothing short of transformative. She poured herself into her work, taking on new projects and allowing herself to grow into a version of herself she hadn't seen in years. She rediscovered her love for painting, something she had put aside when she'd been swept up in the whirlwind of her relationship. Slowly, but surely, Charlotte began to rebuild. She still had moments of doubt, days when the ache of betrayal crept back into her heart. But with each passing day, the sting of what had happened dulled just a little more. She found solace in her friends and family, who supported her through the darkest days. They reminded her of who she was before Aaron and Madison, before the heartbreak. She wasn't the woman who had been torn apart by lies. She was Charlotte Matthews, a woman who was strong enough to survive the worst, and come out the other side stronger. One afternoon, as Charlotte sat in a cafe in downtown Denver, she received a text message from a number she didn't recognize. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the simple message, "I'm sorry, Charlotte. I never meant to hurt you." It was from Aaron. Her first instinct was to ignore it. But she didn't. She took a deep breath, then typed a response. "I appreciate your apology, but I don't need it. I've moved on, Aaron. I need to focus on myself now." The truth was, Charlotte wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't sad. She had done the hard work of letting go, and now it was time for her to move forward. A few weeks later, Charlotte got an unexpected invitation. It was from Madison. She had reached out to meet, to talk things over one last time. It was a difficult decision for Charlotte, but she agreed. She knew that she had to hear Madison out, if only to find closure. They met at the same cafe where the betrayal had been uncovered, the Golden Latte. The place that had been a symbol of their old lives now felt like a space of healing. It was a strange irony, but Charlotte didn't mind. She had learned not to cling to the past. Madison sat across from her, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Charlotte, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I know there's nothing I can do to fix what I've done. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I hope you can understand that I never wanted to hurt you. I was confused, and I made a selfish decision. I lost everything because of it." Charlotte felt a weight on her chest. She'd never imagined hearing Madison speak so honestly, so vulnerably. For a moment, Charlotte saw her as she had been once, the friend she had known and loved. But time had passed, and the damage had been done. "I understand, Madison," Charlotte replied, her voice calm. "I know that you were struggling, and I know it wasn't about me. But what you did, and what Aaron did, it changed everything." Madison nodded. "I get it. I'll never expect things to be the same. But I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Truly." Charlotte took a deep breath, her mind racing with everything she had been through. But in the end, she realized that she didn't need to hold on to the anger. "Not anymore. I'll never forget what happened," Charlotte said slowly, choosing her words carefully. "But I can't keep carrying it with me. I'm moving on, Madison. I need to. For myself." Madison's face softened. "I respect that. I really do. The conversation was brief, but it gave Charlotte the closure she had been seeking. She could finally look at the past without feeling the weight of betrayal bearing down on her. She could remember the friendship they had shared, and acknowledge the pain, but she was no longer trapped in it. As the months passed, Charlotte continued to heal. She moved into a new apartment, one that felt like a fresh start. She surrounded herself with people who truly cared for her, including her sister, Sarah, who had been a rock throughout everything. Sarah was a constant source of support, always reminding Charlotte of her worth. She encouraged her to open herself up again, to love herself first before anything else. Charlotte also reconnected with her love for painting, dedicating time to creating art that reflected her journey. She even held her first gallery showing, a collection of abstract pieces that conveyed both the pain of betrayal and the strength it had taken to rise above it. The show was a success, and Charlotte felt a sense of pride she hadn't known in years. One evening, while at the gallery, Charlotte met someone new. A woman named Lucy, who was warm and kind, and who seemed to understand Charlotte in a way no one else had before. They talked for hours, sharing stories of heartbreak, loss, and resilience. It was a quiet, beautiful moment, a sign that maybe, just maybe, Charlotte wasn't done with love. But this time, it would be on her terms. Years later, Charlotte stood at the edge of a cliff, overlooking the Colorado Rockies. It was a place she had visited often, a spot that had become her sanctuary. She had come to understand that life was full of unexpected twists, that people would come and go, and that not every story had a happy ending. But there was beauty in the journey. There was peace in the healing. Charlotte had learned to love herself again, to trust herself again. And, in time, she allowed others to love her too. She knew she was strong, and no matter what came next, she would be okay. As she stood there, breathing in the crisp mountain air, Charlotte smiled. She had finally found her peace.